A fundamental difference between Hinduism and Buddhism is that Hinduism believes in an eternal soul whereas Buddhism does not believe in it. Buddhism regards the self in the being as transient and identifies it as the not-self or anatma, anatta. The Buddhist anatma is an aggregate of parts, not an indivisible whole. It becomes dissolved into an indefinable state upon nirvana. Jainism believes that souls, Atmas, are distinguishable by their form as well as size and possess materiality. Some souls are extremely minute and may live in clusters while some, which reside in large animals such as elephants, are much larger. The bound souls are subject to transmigration, but the liberated souls are all-knowing and reside in the highest realm of the universe. In Hinduism, Atma means that which breathes. In the early Vedic literature, Atma was identified with breath, prana. Since breath is vital to the continuation of life in the body and the functioning of other organs, it is considered the lord of the body. In the subsequent literature, the self is identified as the Lord, Isvara, and breath as a deity, Vayu. According to Hinduism and its various schools such as Samkhya and Yoga, each being possesses a self, Atma, and a not-self, Anatma. The self remains hidden in the body, the not-self, which is made up of the finite realities, tattvas, of nature such as the senses, the mind, the ego, etc., and may contain both gross and subtle bodies or only subtle bodies. The Upanishads describe the self as Lord who lives inside the city of 9 or 11 gates or openings. The Yoga Sutras, 2.5, declares that in the state of ignorance, avidya, one perceives the transient, impure and painful not-self as the eternal, pure, joyful self. Attachment to not-self and identification with it lead to bondage and suffering. The body exists for the enjoyment of the self. The individual self is a replica of the cosmic self or Purusha. Hence it also goes by the name Purusha, the universal male. According to Saivism, in the phenomenal world called samsara, the individual self is subject to the impurities of egoism, anava, delusion, moha, and attachments, pasas. The Upanishads abound in the descriptions of self. A closer study reveals that the concept of self in the Upanishads emerged over time through different phases of understanding, from that of a breathing self to an eternal self. The Hindu concept of self is different from the Judeo-Christian concept of soul. The Christian soul is subtle, but it has qualities and even a name and form. They are identifiable by their individual personalities at least until the Judgment Day. In Hinduism, the self in its boundless state is pure, eternal and without qualities, beingness or individuality. In the pure state as the liberated soul, it is indistinguishable from other selves. However, in the embodied state or in the bound state it has both gross and subtle bodies, and like the Christian soul is identifiable. According to Advaita, the individual soul is an illusion. It is the same self which appears in the body as an embodied self, but upon liberation it disappears into the universal self just as the waves subside into the ocean. There is no equivalent word for Atman in English. In English the word self conveys a different meaning, but for lack of proper expression and convenience, we are accustomed to use the word soul for the self. Both contemporary and ancient literature of Hinduism abound in the descriptions of Atman, which is considered the ultimate essence of all existence. The following are few selected quotations on Atma or Atman.